Good evening. This is the Northern Sun Experience. All season long, the mission for the Augustana men's basketball team has been crystal clear. With a record-setting 31-3 team last season that fell short in the NCAA tournament, nothing less than reaching for a national championship would be accepted. This season, the Vikings have followed the same script, winning the NSIC tournament and hosting the Central Region tournament at the Sanford Pentagon. They started their championship quest against the 8-seed Harding out of Arkansas, and they would be the aggressors right away. Dan Jansen with the hoop plus the foul for the first points of the game. And then Augie would show its prowess from the outside. Casey Schilling nails the three off the pick and pop with Jordan Spencer. And then later in the half, it's Spencer taking it himself to the rack. Augustana moves to the second round easily with a 185 win over Harding. Two other NSIC teams made the Central Region and face each other in the first round. Minnesota State, MSU Moorhead. Jalen Pendleton draws the Dragon defense, feeds John Fuqua for the dunk. Fuqua had 17 in the first half alone. Gijal Sangalo came back from a broken finger, looking no worse for the wear, nailing this three. MSU Moorhead up 3 at the break. Second half, Dragons now down 3 before Aaron Lean ties things up with this triple from the right side. But the Mavericks would continue to feed Fuqua. Tough 2 inside to break the tie. He led all scorers with 28. Mavs up 3 in the final seconds. One last chance for the Dragons, but Tanner Crutchman's 3 is blocked by Cole Harper, and that would do it. Last season's Central Region champion falls in round 1, 85-81. So the Mavs moved on to play Northwest Missouri State in the second round, rematch of last year's first round. Justin Pitts came locked and loaded. This 3 gave the Bearcats an early 10-0 lead. Mavericks would try to stay in the game with some gritty play. Fuqua gets stripped but recovers to get the offensive rebound and the putback. MSU's within 6, but the night would belong to Pitts. He may only be 5'9", but his play keeps growing, driving down the middle of the lane, putting it in. He had a career-high 38 as the Bearcats topped the Mavs 82-60. Meanwhile, Augie's second-round matchup would come against the 4-seed Nebraska Kearney. Lopers with some nice ball movement early. Connor Baronet gets it back on the give and go, and we're tied at 13. But Augie would rely on the low post presence of Dan Jansen to keep things steady. Working his way inside, muscling it up for 2. He led the Vikings with 19. And one sequence would give Augie the cushion it needed. First, Schilling nails the 3 from the top of the key, and mere seconds later, he steals the pass, glides in for the hammer dunk. Augie up 11 at that point, and they would move on with a 77-67 win. So that set up Augustana and Northwest Missouri State in the tournament championship. Bearcats eliminated the Vikings in the second round last year, thanks in large part to Pitts, the sophomore sensation, so quick off the dribble, rattles it home. Bearcats up 5, but the Vikings would claw their way back, scraping for every bucket. A sloppy play turns into a wide-open 3 for Schilling. Augie by 1 at the break. Second half, a back-and-forth affair. Pitts steps back and nails the 3. He led all scorers with 34 points, but Schilling would prove to be just enough in the end. He led the Vikings with 24. Augie got some late free throws from Jordan Spencer, and the Vikings captured their first Central Region championship, 80-78 over Northwest Missouri State.
We're not just like, oh, good, we made it. We got to go down there and be ready to play. You know, it's not like, oh, okay, we got over that hurdle. We want to go down there and play our best basketball.
Well, when we come back, Jordan Dalton will join me to discuss the Central Region Tournament and how Augustana might fare in the Elite 8 in Frisco, Texas.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience, joined by Jordan Dalton to discuss the Central Region Men's Tournament. Jordan, a whale of a game in the championship. Augustana finally gets to the Elite 8. They do it with a big, fun, entertaining win over Northwest Missouri State. How high is this team's confidence right now?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Augustana, Coach Tom Billiter, his entire staff, and the entire Viking community. Huge win for them. First ever, obviously appearance at the Elite 8, so very well deserved. But like you talked about, they had to play. They had to play all 40 minutes. Northwest Missouri State gave them all they could handle. But I think their confidence level is the same as it's been all year, and that's high. If you listen to Casey Schilling or Dan Jansen or Al Richter after the game, they talked about how they expected to win this game. They had a number of goals coming into the season: win conference outright, win the conference tournament, win the regional tournament. But that's not their final goal. They're not satisfied with just going down to the Elite 8. They want to go down there and make some noise and hopefully cut down some nets. So I think, like I said, they've been a very even-keeled team all year, and I think this was just one more step to their ultimate goal.
Not that they ever wanted it, but maybe a little bit of revenge that they got Northwest Missouri State again, especially how last season ended?
Absolutely. Like you said, they brought back, the Vikings brought back every guy from the team last year. And so all those guys had a chance to experience how devastating that loss was last night. And then when you talk about Justin Pitts, in my opinion, best point guard I've seen in the country, at this level. Just the way he controls the paint, controls the tempo of the game, can really score in a variety of ways. I'm sure they wanted that game. They wanted to prove not only to everybody else but to themselves. They beat Northwest Missouri State earlier this year. Only 1 point on the last-second shot by Dan Jansen. But I think it has to be great to win in the way they did, the fashion they did.
You include the playoff game this year, last year, and the regular season matchup. Those 3 games between the two teams decided by a combined 5 points. So just insane how evenly matched those teams are. So now they're in the Elite Eight. The tournament has been reseeded. Augie is the 2 seed. They're going to face the 7 seed Tarleton State, which is a school out of Stephenville, Texas, next Wednesday, March 23rd at 6 p.m. So how do you see Augie getting ready for the Elite Eight? Is it good to have this week of rest?
Yeah, I think, with the amount of minutes their starting 5 played last night, all 5 played over 30 minutes. So that's a tough, tall task, especially how physical the game was as well. So any rest you can get is always good. Obviously, a couple of those days will get eaten up by travel and things of that nature, but always good to rest those starting 5. But I think they're approaching the tournament 1 game at a time, as they have all year long. They're such a confident team, but once again, they've had a different demeanor and different goals from the outset of this season. And so I would imagine them to approach this game as business as usual. Take it 1 game at a time. If you listen to the huddle, like I said, I think Casey Schilling said their common theme after they broke the huddle was 3 more. They want to win 3 more games to win that national championship. But it will be good to rest some of those guys. Because Jordan Spencer, Dan Jansen played a ton of minutes last night. But yeah, I think they're just approaching it business as usual.
All right, we'll see what happens with Augustana. They start off a week from today against Tarleton State. Well, some other NSIC teams in the Central region. Minnesota State Mankato notched a first-round win over MSU Moorhead, then lost to Northwest Missouri State in the second round. But, Jordan, considering what the Mavs lost last season heading into this season has to be considered a success.
Oh, yeah. I think if you listen to Matt Margenthaler after the game, he talked about how much of a success this was. No other team in the NSIC had to reshape and reconfigure their team as much as Minnesota State Mankato did. And so I thought Coach Margenthaler and his staff did a great job of bringing in 9 new guys and really getting them to buy into the Mavericks system and playing together as a team. So I think you would have to look at this season as a success, like we talked about. 20-win season, making the regional, not only making the regional, putting up a great upset, against Minnesota State Moorhead. So it's tough to look at it in the moment because obviously, you want to win every game that you can. But I think if the Mavericks take a step back and look at their season as a whole, they'll be very, very excited with the way it turned out.
And like you said, 9 new players, and a lot of them are still going to come back next year, so the future definitely looking bright for Minnesota State Mankato. MSU Moorhead, meanwhile, they fall right away in round 1 to the Mavericks. Close game, but a loss nevertheless. They're going to lose Isaac Sievely, the NSIC's leading scorer. They're going to lose Tyler Vaughn, another starter. They're going to lose Gijel Sangalo. But to me, Tanner Kretschman, Aaron Lean, and down the stretch, Addison Park really stepped up for the Dragons. So what is next year going to look like for MSU Moorhead?
Yeah, I honestly think obviously the team will look a lot different as far as the offensive flow goes. This year everything started with the post touch to Sievely, and obviously that worked out pretty well as they had, finished the year with 30 wins. But next year, I think you'll see a lot more of Kretschman and Lean. Aaron Lean, one of the best 3-point shooters in the conference, and he did a lot of things, not just catching and shooting, off of penetration and kicks, but also pick and pops. He was able to get to the basket a little bit more. Obviously in the offseason, he'll work on his handle and be able to hopefully be able to attack the rim a little bit more. But he's a dangerous weapon outside. And then point guard Tanner Kretschman, that gets tough. He led the conference in assist-to-turnover ratio with the +4 assist-to-turnover ratio, and just does a great job whether it's off the pick and roll or just straight line drives. Not only getting himself in positions to score, but also opening things up for his teammates. And so I think while this year, like I said, everything started with a paint touch, with the pass down to the post and Sievely. Next year, you'll see a lot more free-flowing offense, a lot of pick-and-pop situations, with Kretschman and Lean, and just a lot more spread offense to utilize, their shooting ability and obviously Kretschman's passing and ball handling ability as well.
Dragons will definitely be an interesting team to see next season. Well, what's a team in the NSIC that did not make the postseason this year that maybe looks good for a run next year?
Yeah, I think if you look at a team like Northern State, they had some opportunities this year where they were really good. Obviously, they lose their best 3-point shooter and top scorer, Sky Warwick. but they bring back still 3 guys that average double figures or more. And so we've talked about it all season long. The Wolves are a team that plays so hard each and every single possession that they're going to be in the majority of games that they play. Biggest task for them is use this year as a learning experience on how to win on the road. They were a great home team this year, really struggled on the road. So hopefully next year, you bring back quite a few guys that got meaningful playing time this year, and so they can translate that to maybe a little bit more focus, a little bit more execution on the road. But I think if you're a Northern State fan, you got to be pretty optimistic about the way next year should turn out.
And the Wolves were the only team to beat Augustana in the conference season this season. Well, thanks, Jordan, for the outlook on the men's side. When we come back, Jordan's going to break down the women's Central region.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Once again, joined by former Augustana point guard Jordan Dalton. Jordan, we're going to break down the women's Central region now. It was in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and we'll start with the host school, Pittsburgh State. They faced the University of Sioux Falls, NSIC tournament champions and the 7th seed. You could kind of tell the Cougars were a little new at this. They lose 79-39. Disappointing ending. But if you're Travis Traphagen, what do you take out of this entire experience?
Yeah, like I said, obviously a tough way to end the season, which has been one of their best seasons, obviously, in school history. So like I said, in the moment, it's tough to evaluate. But I think if you take a little time away and take a step back, I think Coach Trapp will be very pleased with the way his season ended. You look at some of their accolades in this, only their 4th year as a Division II program. They win their first ever conference tournament. They make it to their first ever region. They tie the school record with 27 regular season wins in a single season. And so you got a lot to be proud of, but you also have a lot to build on. Seasons like this are what recruits look at to say, hey, that's a top-notch program in the NSIC. That's a type of style of basketball that's fun to watch and I want to play for. So I think what Coach Trapp showed is the USF Cougars are here to stay, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with moving forward in the NSIC. So very great year. Really a historic season, for the Cougars, and definitely something to be proud of. Just like I said, tough way to end a really good season.
And even though they improved a lot this year, they're going to have to regroup next year. They lose 5 seniors, including the Player of the Year, Taylor Varsho. Well, Northern State snuck in as the 8th seed, and they gave the 1 seed Emporia State all it could handle before they fell in the final minute, losing by 6 points. Only 2 seniors for the Wolves this season, so how do they regroup for next year?
Yeah, if you look at the Wolves, like I said, only 2 seniors. Those 2 seniors just happen to be 2 of their top 3 leading scorers.
Sure.
So that's the tough part, obviously, is you have to find a way to replace that scoring. But you look at Coach Frederickson. He's been there over 35 years. He's got a pretty good handle of what he wants to do.
He knows his system.
Exactly. And like you said, it's a system on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Northern State's calling card is always going to be defense. Coach Frederickson has been able to implement one of the toughest, most physical defenses in the country. And so I think that's always going to be their calling card, always going to be their MO. On the offensive end, we talk about it. They're a really, set play oriented type of team. And so you don't want to say it's just plug a player and go, but it kind of is plug a player and go. Sure. in that system, because they do run so many half-court sets that the biggest thing that the Warriors are going to have to overcome is, or the Wolves, are going to have to overcome is, who makes those shots now? And so some of the underclassmen are going to have to step up, be willing to take some of those bigger time shots and get the job done. But once again, when you got an established coach like Coach Frederickson, in that system, in such a, like I said, detailed, system-oriented program that they have, I think they'll be just fine next year.
Northern State, definitely a team to keep an eye on. Well, Winona State overcame a 13-point halftime deficit, and they beat Fort Hays State in round 1. Then they fall to the 1-seed Emporia State in round 2. The Warriors finished 30-4, best season in school history. They're going to lose a lot of scoring next year with the loss of Alexis Foley and Connor Nagel. So how do the Warriors regroup? Yeah,
I think when you look at Foley and Nagel, the toughest part is obviously their numbers are outstanding. They're 2 of the best offensive weapons that the Warriors were able to put on the court at all times this year. But when you look at them as emotional leaders and just senior leaders on that squad, I think that's going to be the biggest thing to overcome. When you watch the Warriors play, other teammates fed off of Nagel and Foley. The passion they play with, the energy they play with, the confidence they play with. Younger players look up to them, and that helps younger players kind of be a little bit more comfortable in their own roles. And so I think what the Warriors are going to really have to combat more than anything is, how do you replace that senior leadership? Every day in practice, who's getting the underclassmen ready, who's getting teammates ready to go and be focused to come out there and play hard each and every single night, that you do have a game. And so I think while you look at stats, obviously, like I said, top 2 leading scorers, best offensive weapons they have on the court. I think it's the leadership in the locker room and the practice setting. That's going to be the toughest part to replace those two.
They're definitely going to have to rely on Kayla Timmerman, the junior transfer from Iowa. Well, moving on again to a team that maybe did not make the Central Region tournament. What's a non-postseason team that has a good chance of making a run next season?
Yeah, I think if you look at Minnesota State Moorhead, I thought they had a great year all year long. They finished 10th in the region. They had a great year and a really good year for the NSIC. We talked about it. There's 4 or 5 teams from the NSIC logjam in the final 2 spots in the region, and they just kind of came up on the short end, obviously, this year. But you look at what they're bringing back. They're bringing back 2 of their top leading scorers. They finished the regular season winning 8 out of their last 9 games. So there was a lot of momentum, toward the end of the season. Like I said, just didn't end the way they wanted to. And when that happens and you bring so many weapons back, what it does is I think it lights a fire under you, because you get to a point where you're so close. You can see the regional tournament right in your grasp and just fall a little short. So that maybe makes you work a little bit harder in the summertime. You're going to hit the weight room a little bit more. You're going to get in the gym and get a couple more shots because you don't want to come up short again this year, or next year, excuse me. So I think, Moorhead is a great team, and they've put themselves in a great position to do some phenomenal things next year. And I just think the way the season ended kind of will light a fire in them for them to come out next year with a renewed sense of focus.
It'll be an interesting season next year because, as you said, the parity on the women's side was really good this year.
Absolutely, and that's what makes the league so fun to watch, is that every single week you have phenomenal games. And like we talked about earlier, it's a fun brand of basketball to watch. You get teams that are good, getting up and down the court, taking a lot of good shots, moving the basketball. You don't see a lot of isolations or a lot of stalls in the offense. It's just a fun brand of basketball to watch. And the NSIC, that's what's great about the NSIC, is because they do recruit a lot of the same players. So it's a very, very balanced league. And I think that's what makes it one of the most fun leagues to watch in the country.
All right, thank you very much, Jordan Dalton. Well, when we come back, highlights from the NCAA Wrestling Championships.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. 21 NSIC wrestlers qualified for the Division II National Championships in Sioux Falls this past weekend, and several of them had a chance to capture the national title. In fact, 3 NSIC wrestlers were in their respective weight classes' final round matchup, but in the end, only one would end up on top. At 125 pounds, St. Cloud State's Brett Velasquez took down Willie Bowens of Mercyhurst in a 5-0 decision. It's Velasquez's first national championship, and it comes after Huskies senior Tim Prescott won the 125-pound division last year. St. Cloud State as a team also won its 2nd straight national championship. Afterwards, Velasquez discussed what it meant to emerge as champion.
It's surreal. I mean, as a wrestler, I guess this is the pinnacle of most wrestlers' dreams and goals in their career, and to achieve it as a redshirt freshman, that's phenomenal in itself. And I mean, you never know when your career could be taken from you. And so I'm very thankful. I'm very humbled to be given this opportunity to go out there and wrestle today and be able to come home with the championship.
Some other notable finishes from the NSIC. Northern State's Joe Gomez finished as the national runner-up at 197 pounds, falling to Romero Cotton from Nebraska Kearney. Minnesota State's Malcolm Allen also finished in 2nd place in the heavyweight division, 285 pounds, losing his final bout with Joseph Aggiano of California Baptist. 3rd place finishers include the Mavericks' Matt MINCEY at 157, St. Cloud State's Clint Poster at 165, Minnesota State's Adam Cooling at 174, and St. Cloud State's Austin Gorgon in the heavyweight division, 285. Blake Bosch of MSU Moorhead placed 4th at 133 pounds, while St. Cloud State's Jay Hildreth was 4th at 149. Matt Nelson of the Huskies was 5th at 141 pounds, while Upper Iowa's Jordan Rinkin was 5th at 157 pounds. When we come back, another national championship featured several NSIC athletes this past weekend. Find out who did the best at indoor track and field when we come back.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back. In addition to the Women's Central Region Basketball Tournament, Pittsburgh State and Kansas also hosted the NCAA Indoor Track and Field Championships this past weekend, featuring 39 different NSIC athletes, and 2 of them emerged as national champions. We'll start on the track where Minnesota State's Miles Hunter was miles and miles ahead of everyone else in the 60-meter hurdles. Not only did Hunter win his first national championship, but he did so in record time, 7.53 seconds, the tops for all divisions, not just Division II. Hunter's victory is the 8th individual Indoor Maverick Championship and the first in the 60-meter hurdles. So once again, congrats to junior Miles Hunter. As for the field portion, another record setter from another all-world athlete. Winona State sophomore Caitlin Long took home her 2nd consecutive national championship in the weight throw, heaving her first object more than 74.5 feet, shattering not only the previous national championship record by 5 feet, but her own personal Division II record by more than 1.5 feet. An absolutely unreal performance by Long, so congrats to her and the rest of Winona State. The outdoor track and field season is just around the corner. Once again, a thank you to all of our NSIC member schools for their time and contributions. We'll be back next week right here with another Northern Sun Experience.